Nobody who talks about saving money with the low income actually wants to admit. Most of the advice out there was written by people who never had to choose between paying a bill and buying groceries, and I am not going to do that to you today. What I am going to do is walk you through a real, honest, practical system for actually saving money when your paycheck feels like it disappears before you can even blink. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to have a completely different relationship with your money than you do right now. Before we get into it, I need you to understand one thing. This is not about cutting out your morning coffee. That is not why you are struggling. The real reasons go deeper than that, and we are going to get to all of them. So stick with me because the most important stuff is coming in the middle and the end of this video, and you do not want to miss it. Let us start with the very first thing that most people get completely wrong when they try to save money with a low income. They try to save what is left over. Think about that for a second. You get paid, you pay your bills, you buy food, you fill up your gas tank, maybe you grab a few things you needed, and then at the end of the month you look at your bank account and you think, okay, whatever is left, that's my savings. And then there's nothing left, and you feel like a failure. But here's the truth. You are not a failure. You just have the order of operations completely backwards. The first shift you need to make is something called paying yourself first. And I know you've probably heard that phrase before, but let me explain what it actually means in real life when money is tight. The moment any amount of money lands in your account, before you pay a single bill, before you buy a single thing, you move a small amount to a separate savings account. I'm talking about a genuinely small amount. We're not talking about 15 or 20% of your income. When you're on a low income, even $5 matters. Even $10 moved automatically before you touch the rest of your paycheck is going to change your psychology around money over time. Here's why this works. When you save what is left over, your brain treats savings as optional. But when you save first, your brain starts to treat everything else as the budget you have to work within. You adapt to whatever is available to you. This is called lifestyle adaptation, and it works in both directions. You can adapt to having less available for spending just as easily as you adapted to spending more. The trick is making the savings automatic, so your brain never even registers it as a loss. Now let's talk about the actual numbers, because this is where it gets practical. A lot of financial advice talks about things like budgeting without giving you a real framework. So here's the one I want you to use. It's simple, and it works even when money is really tight. It's called the 50-30-20 rule, but we're going to adjust it for low-income situations because the standard version simply doesn't work when most of your money goes to necessities. In a traditional budget, 50% goes to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. But when you have a low income, your needs might take up 70 or even 80% of your income. So instead of feeling guilty about not hitting 20% savings, let's reframe this. Your goal is just to create any positive gap at all between what comes in and what goes out. That gap is your savings rate. And right now, any positive gap is a win. So step one is to list every single expense you have. Not from memory. Actually go through your bank statements from the last 2 months and write down every single transaction. I want you to see exactly where your money is going because most people are genuinely surprised when they do this exercise. There are usually 3 or 4 subscriptions they forgot about, charges they didn't recognize, and spending patterns they didn't realize they had. Once you have that list, you're going to put everything into one of 2 categories: fixed necessary expenses and variable or optional expenses. Fixed necessary expenses are things like rent, utilities, car payments, insurance, minimum debt payments. Variable or optional expenses are things like food beyond the basics, entertainment, clothing, anything you could technically reduce or eliminate. Now here's where I want to push back on something. A lot of people look at that variable category and immediately feel shame, like, why did I spend money on that when I should have been saving? I want you to let go of that right now. Shame does not help you save money. Understanding your patterns does. Look at the variable expenses not with judgment, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, which of these actually brought me genuine value or joy, and which of these were impulse purchases that I barely even remember? This distinction matters because when you start making cuts, you want to cut the things that weren't adding real value to your life anyway. If you genuinely love a specific streaming service and you watch it every week, that might be worth keeping. But if there are 3 subscriptions you haven't used in 2 months, those are the first to go. Let's talk about housing, because for most people, this is by far the biggest expense, and also the one with the most potential for major savings. If your rent or mortgage is eating more than 30% of your take-home pay, that's what's really limiting your ability to save. And I know it feels like housing costs are fixed and you can't do anything about them, but there are actually several things you can do. The first option is adding income to the housing side of the equation. Could you rent out a room? Could you get a roommate? Could you move to a slightly cheaper area if your job allows it? These feel like big decisions, and they are, but if you're paying $800 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment and you got a roommate and split it, you just freed up $400 a month. That's $4,800 a year. Nothing else in this video is going to get you those kinds of numbers. The second option is to negotiate. If you're a good tenant and you've been in your place for a while, many landlords would rather keep you than go through the cost of finding a new tenant. You have more leverage than you think. You might not get a dramatic reduction, but even $50 off your rent per month is $600 a year. Now let's talk about food, because this is the other major area where significant savings are possible and where a lot of people are losing money without realizing it. The average person spends way more on food than they estimate, partly because they're counting grocery bills but forgetting about the coffee runs, the fast food when they're too tired to cook, the delivery apps with their surprise fees and tips. The most powerful food-saving strategy is also the simplest one: meal planning. I know that sounds basic, but hear me out, because most people are not doing it in the way that actually saves money. Real meal planning for a tight budget means you sit down once a week, you decide exactly what you're going to eat for every meal, you make a grocery list from that plan, and you go to the store once with that list and you do not deviate from it. The reason this works is twofold. First, you stop buying ingredients that go bad before you use them, which is one of the biggest hidden money drains in most households. Second, you dramatically reduce the number of times you say, "I don't know what to eat, so I'll just order something." That single decision, not knowing what to eat, is probably costing you $50 to $100 or more per month, depending on how often it happens. Also, buy generic whenever possible. In the vast majority of cases, the store brand and the name brand come from the same factory. The main difference is the packaging and the price. This is not about settling for less quality. It's about refusing to pay for marketing. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough in financial saving conversations. The mental load of living on a low income is exhausting in a way that makes it harder to make good financial decisions. There's actually research showing that financial stress takes up cognitive bandwidth, meaning it genuinely reduces your ability to think clearly and plan ahead. This is not an excuse, it's an explanation, and knowing about it helps you design systems that compensate for it. That's why automation is so important when you're saving on a low income. Every financial decision you have to make manually is a decision that might not get made the right way when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. So you want to automate as much as possible. Set up automatic transfers to savings on payday. Set up auto pay for bills so you never miss one and pay a late fee. Set calendar reminders to review your budget once a month. When you remove the need to make decisions, you remove the opportunities to make the wrong decision. The system works even when your willpower is low, because your willpower is going to be low a lot of the time when you're dealing with the stress of a tight financial situation. Let's talk about debt, because this is the thing silently destroying so many people's ability to save. If you have high-interest debt, particularly credit card debt, that debt is probably costing you more in interest each month than any budgeting strategy could ever save you. The average credit card interest rate right now is genuinely painful, and if you're only making minimum payments, you're essentially running on a treadmill that is tilted against you. There are two main strategies for paying off debt, and they both work. The first is the avalanche method, where you list all your debts by interest rate and attack the highest interest debt first while making minimum payments on everything else. This saves you the most money mathematically over time. The second is the snowball method, where you list all your debts by balance and attack the smallest balance first, regardless of interest. The honest truth is that the best method is whichever you will actually stick to. If you need the psychological wins of the snowball method to stay motivated, use that one. A slightly less mathematically optimal strategy that you actually follow through on beats a perfect strategy you abandon every single time. Now, here's something I want to bring up that a lot of people overlook when they're focused on cutting expenses. Sometimes the problem is not that you're spending